Chilly here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and this is Jupiter Hour, Moon Day, and Ascendant is approaching the Sun. The Sun is 19 degrees Scorpio, and Midheaven 23 degrees Leo, Moon in Leo. Continuing on the previous message, there was a case where one person or several people couldn't find relation with a person. And it can be a patient that was not able to relate to a therapist, or something was not, there was a challenge to relate, and yet there was immense notion to understand or to try to even nourish a person. But the threshold of understanding has to do with the fact that somebody came from a community where enlightenment came through horrific ritual abuse and rape. And the thing about it is that people do develop declares. People do fragment to different realities of the light and of the dark. But this is perpetually happening through trauma. And this is done so that they will perpetuate trauma in the world. That they will only imitate the light. And they're not soulless. They may be operating in the world as soulless sometimes, but there is nothing but raped infants. They're not soulless. But to reckon with the life within, one has to reckon with the horrific horrors that happened within where was supposed to be the motherland, the home, the nourishing place, and for some even the parents, father and mother. So that is a big megalithic threshold that sends residues, ripples across entire. This was also the objective, that it would enslave humanity, that these rituals would enslave humanity, and the people that survived these rituals would only enslave humanity. This was to create the epitomes of Mephisto. And everything was shown through that periscope. So instead of acknowledging what would be beyond horror to acknowledge, people would blame other people for being raped or for being trafficked, or they would kind of believe that something bad happens to certain people. They kind of look for that because that was their only way to deal with all the spiritual bubbles around them that do not ascribe to that reality that was by design intended to invert and corrupt all vortices, all beliefs, sever ties to anything divine and earthly. And funnily enough, these would be people who would take over the land or the real estate or the resources by doing beyond horrific crimes. Now, the truth that they hold is about every crime that happened before them, because that allowed them to enter the land. But now there is a periscope around these societies. The light is returned to these societies too, because if we looked at the darkness of, Islamic men in Somalia whining and crying about not being able to rape 12 years old girl under the guise of marriage. Like, the world is looking at it, and is not looking favorably at it either. So those times, those fake golden ages, okay, were completely ravished and gone. Nobody would look at an old imam that raped a girl at 12 and called her spouse and birthed children with her as a religious authority. Or any authority. Let alone in Judaism or Christianity. Palestinian or Somalian or Sudanese, not to mention Congo. And now that's been a thing, probably young Palestinian women that go into the high-tech industry to combat Israel, and the world will need to be looking very carefully because they are implementing the digital prison agenda. Everybody looks at Israel, nobody looks at Palestine. They already are cashless society. They're implementing all the agendas on Palestine now, on Gaza. And those young Palestinian women, they don't have in mind to get married at 12 to some or to traffic and be trafficked as a form of existence. So the light is now being focused on basically the ones that are still doing that, but behind closed doors and presenting themselves as something. They would have a wife that was born the same year as them outside. Okay? And let no particular person feel that this is personally against them. It's not. It's a trend. That's, okay. I know that a lot of people will feel called out by that, but no, it's a trend. So somebody could not relate to someone, and it can even be a therapeutic type of relation. And the reason being is that how can a patient that's recovering from that relate to a person that tried to enforce that on that patient? There's no relation there. And that therapeutic figure kind of try to figure, do they not relate to me because I'm not a jerk? Maybe women like jerk, and they came up with all these paradigms. They were not seen, particularly when Uranus is finishing up in Taurus. They were not seen, they were not relating to you because you weren't bringing in the water. You were bringing in piss and trying to piss on their soul and call it relation. And not even the healthy, nourishing type of piss. The malnourished, ritually abusive type of everything you were turning into mockery, and you wonder why your patient is not feeling related. Your patient is recovering. And this is exactly what happened. There is also another energy of like somebody was longing for their love, but they could only see women as whores. And they were vying, waiting, longing, dreaming. About what? And then they would think that it's because they didn't have the courage to rape. Really? And the reason to that, okay, the reason to that is because these people grew up in such atrocities where love was seemed to be like something of losers that they believe in before they are trafficked, before they are raped. Not seeing, notwithstanding how they create that society and the economy with it. Because to acknowledge that would be to acknowledge the horrific ritual abuse that they went through. with all the attempts to fight that as they were children. So much so that an energy was thinking, am I supposed to die to get to love? And it kind of awakened everyone because somebody was refusing to put the mask on, refusing to put the dissociation on, and they were using the fact that they see through it to stand in their truth and seek out the people that are standing in their truth, and the fact that their particular privilege, okay, relative to these worlds, it was a privilege, and they were using that privilege in favor of shedding the light on that truth. And that might have not been a privilege. Like, that person is not necessarily, we think about privilege as, white old money people or novo rich. No, it's not that type of privilege. It's the privilege not to be in that sector and still have food and still have, the ability to speak and shed that light into that sector. And it fragmented the reality of the dream that was dystopian. Not because this wasn't real. The abuse was real, and shedding the light on the fact that the abuse was real cracks the code that was meant to entrap the souls within it. And there is an anger that it hasn't happened until now. This is a correct anger. And that anger, and that has to do with the fact that Islamic imams were raping young girls at 12 in Somalia, and we needed these women like Modi that stand up to them. The government laws that they upturned to show how corrupt is entire Islam in Somalia. Anything that's on the foundation of imam raping girls is no religion, no culture, no tradition, and no motherland, and no people. These women are saving Somali people from being colonized, from being genocided. But they're not doing that by wearing a scarf. They're doing that by cracking the code and shedding the light and showing how ridiculous it is that an old 70, 80 years old man cries about Islam when he's not allowed to rape girls at 12. And the women that up until then knew something wrong but didn't stand up to it and had to pretend that they're okay with that. Think about Israeli women, even secular, that did circumcision to their 8 days old son, knowing that the breast is falling from their milk with trauma. And I witnessed that. I live in Israel. I witnessed 2 times when there was such ceremony. One I was completely not expecting because I thought it was a secular family, and the first one was also secular family, and I did not know when I was invited what I was going to witness, and the shock and the trauma. That's ritual abuse. that everybody is celebrating and thinking of it in the rabbinical class, saying is not godly. It's not with the God. It's with the pagan religion that the people still need to have, and the people, they only do that because the rabbinical tell them. So now it's the think about a person trying to be toxic because he thinks that that's going to get the girl, and then the girl is thriving somewhere. Where is she thriving? Where is she thriving? With herself? With something that is coming even from the dead? Or with something, what is she thriving at? What is she doing there? Oh, she's not going where it's toxic. In fact, she's breaking free of anything toxic that they try to put her in. And all society has to look at itself and say, okay, we cannot ignore these rapes that happen to infants anymore. We also cannot hide that, or that we, the society, have participated in that. I think I covered my food. Here is my food. That was so funny. We had toast burning, then we had to let the house breathe for a second. Then I covered all of the pastry. And I have to clean the entire blanket. But that was, thank you. Ooh, amazing. Needed. Um, but that was basically, and here it can be even around the family of origin of the person. Like people don't really get that person or that generation. And I think that there was an attempt to show how here there is food, there is housing, there is, come on, there is. Yes, but all of this require to go through gate that is corrupt, that is portal of rape and not of joy of living. And whether in marriage or not in marriage. It's like somebody's like, but I wanted this and that. Yes, but you want someone to be your whore. You don't want someone, you don't honor love. This. You cannot even see love. You don't have a paradigm for love. You don't have an economy for love. You do not house love. And love goes homeless in your dominion. And when love leaves you, you wonder if you weren't cruel enough to entice it. Because all you know is trauma bonds. A while ago, I saw an energy saying, you would never let me treat you badly. You're up to something. Because somebody had identified, this person is up to something. What are you up to? They saw that they're not coming from a thread that is corrupt. They could not be horrified. They could not be horrified. What do I mean by that? Both by there's not a person that you can tell to you're a whore and she will just reclaim being a slut. It is also not a person that is horrified by the horrors that happen because they know. And that's what they're up to. They're not going to live with these horrors. And they knew it internally. Because there's something about sexual sovereignty that enmeshes, that they could understand that thread, or at least one of their personalities could. They say, you would never let me treat you badly. You're up to something. No, you would never let me treat you in all those ways. You'll never let me do those things to you. It's like, oh, true. But their entire erotic perception was around those things. And every time, and here's the thing, every time that person went away, with the utmost respect went away, they're like, hello. Well, and there was always kind of an excuse to that, because that person was exposing everything, and they're like, when is that video coming down? Never. It comes down with the societies that traffic children. And every trick in the book, whether it's to threaten or to be nice or to be, was not working. And this is what the thing is about, because Uranus at the end of Taurus, it particularly next to Beta Persei, it trines Pluto in Aquarius and sextiles Neptune and Saturn. So this is something that has been ongoing. Now, here's the thing. There are a lot of people that have been working on a lot of things for quite some time, more so than certain figures would even imagine. And that person identified that it's happening over there, like in the Peterche Oort, in the Peterche Oort land. And they were given clues, but it's people that are writing screenplays when they are time traveling, but the time travel happened through rape. And so we cannot even talk about equal power relations, because they got their powers by rape. And they keep communicating, okay, with the people. And this is where the Kundalini rise is kind of like the life energy of everyone, because they need to harvest life energy. So basically there is the life energy of everyone coming to friction, because it's kind of like, hey, there is food here, there is this, there is that. Yeah, but everybody has to be considered core. Yeah, about uh, that little thing. We know it's the beyond the rainbow thingy where people were raped, and then it's like, okay, gotta go back to one, gotta go back to the cocoon, and oh, you were afraid that you wouldn't have. No, when people rape, the food becomes not nourishing. You need to face your fear from the life, from the world. Uh huh. The MK Ultra project need to be defunded. What's our 5% doing over there?